we're doing here today is a little different. I wasn't here yesterday, so I'm not very sure what modality yesterday took. But one of the major things I would want us to place emphasis on today is one of to place emphasis on is the application questions. So in as much as you're able to get insights on what the application entails, you're able to know what to put in, what not to put in, your ability or not to answer the application questions succinctly would actually distinguish you. And that's where the overall mark comes from. They'll be vetting your questions. They'll be vetting the answers you provide to those essays. So we would be analyzing these questions, explaining to you how you should be answering them, in what way you should be penning down your essays, just so that whoever is able to pick up your application and is vetting it, is scoring it, would be able to connect the dots seamlessly and would have a very good and easy ride. And I will not be doing this alone today. I have distinguished panelists with me, and they are all also Mandela Washington Fellowship alumni, and they would be working with me today. So you're all welcome once more. My name is Esther Nathaniel. I am a 2017 Mandela Washington Fellow, and I'm also a coordinator on the Ali Network Plateau, Nigeria. So we'll be going straight to talk for today. I can see Funke Adeoye is on the call. She's also a panelist. There's Julius Ilori. There's Zigwe. I was on a call like this, I think on Sunday. We're on another panel with Zigwe, and I think another one is coming up tomorrow next. So you're all welcome. So I'll be going straight to, let me start with Zigwe. If you were to ask, what was that thing that made your application stand out? What would you say? Quickly, before we delve fully into the questions. Zigwe, if you can hear me, if there was anything that made your application stellar, that made it stand out, what would you say from your own perspective?
Hi, Esther. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Okay, what made my application stellar? I would say that a good understanding of what I was asked, questions I was asked, and the fact that I was very original about my response, meaning that every response that I gave to each question that was asked was based on something that I actually did or something that I actually experienced. And also the fact that I did have a background or I did have experiences that could match each question that was being asked. It's not, the questions were not things that I knew beforehand, but then when I went through the questions, I could relate just by reading each question, I could relate and picture scenarios from different experiences I've had in the course of my journey and work to each question that was being asked. So I would say that the one thing that I think stood out for me in the application would be my ability to respond to the questions, to have a good understanding of the questions that were asked, and the fact that I had the experience or the background that could fit into each of the questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'd be going to Funke. Funke, you're welcome to the session. How have you been? So I'll be asking you directly, if there was a mistake you think, if there's a mistake you think people make in the course of the applications, what would you pinpoint? What one mistake would you highlight as one general mistake people make?
All right. Thank you very much, Esther, for the question. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. So I think I can answer that question because I applied 4 times, and I possibly know what happened the first time that I didn't get in, just
Mm.
reviewing my answers. I got in twice. So I would say that if there is one mistake, it would be not showing not showing impact and traction in your application in line with the question. So there are 6 questions, and for every question you're supposed to, I think, like Zigwa said, you're supposed to have something like stories or something like milestones that you have reached, that you can show that yes, with respect to this question, this has happened. So my initial application, I had just started my organization. It was just a year. And so I know that most of what I was saying, it was more in form of idea, like what I wanted to do. And I hadn't really done so much. There's that. And then there is also not being able to explain your impact in words. Now, it's possible that you've not done so much, but you're able to tell your story in such a way that they know you have some prospects. So I would say people not having made maybe sufficient impact for for the question or for what has been asked, and also maybe not being able to tell their story accurately, because the people reading your application, most times they're not Nigerians, so you must be able to paint pictures in their head, pictures of what you've done, how you are the best fit to be a fellow at a particular time. So I would say maybe one mistake would be not being able to paint that story in a way that is convincing. Yes, that's the right word. Yeah, that might just be one of the major mistakes why people don't get in.
Any other one you think?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I should share all that ones. Hello? Hello,
Yeah,
Esther?
share one or two more.
Okay, yeah. So I look, so I've seen a couple of essays, right? And I think another mistake people make is thinking that people who are going to review the applications would always understand the context. So for instance, you're writing about a work you've done and then you're using abbreviations that only Nigerians will understand. Um, I mean, you have to know that the people that will review your applications are not going to be Nigerians. There are people that may not understand, the context of certain things, because they don't live here. So again, it goes back to being able to paint the picture in their head, and also not lying, right? Being original. You For everything that you say in your application, it must be backed up by facts. It must be backed up by um maybe something on social media that people can go back to say, oh, this is true. You can't just come and cook up numbers. For instance, if you have numbers, what do you have to show for that number? I think another mistake would being all over the place. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I
Yes,
can hear
please.
you.
Yes,
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, please.
sorry, a call was
yes,
trying.
we
Yeah,
can hear
sorry, a
you.
call. Yeah, so I said being all over the place. Now, when I say being all over the place, most times, at all points when you apply under a particular track. So you apply under civic engagement as your number one choice, for instance. Now, as Nigerians, I know most of us like have that hustling spirit. You are working in the NGO space, you have a business. In fact, I know people that when they applied, they were working for the government, so they could fall under public management, but they also had NGO, or they also worked as volunteers in an NGO, and then they also had businesses. It's also important that you try as much as possible that in telling your story or in responding to the essay, you are not all over the place. Um, you put your best foot forward. If you know that you're someone that you're like a multi-potentialite, you fit in the business track, you fit in the civic engagement track, which one best sells you? Which one do you think you've been able to make more impact and it will stand you out? Understanding that the competition is fierce in Nigeria. So yes, maybe you have a business, but then you know that you cannot stand besides somebody else that has a business, has made profit for a couple of years. So you want to stay where your talent is. You want to stay where you've had more impact. So, I mean, there are a couple of mistakes, but I think these ones are the ones that come to mind for me now. Make sure you're telling the right story. Make sure you're not all over the place. Make sure you're putting your best foot forward. Understand that the people that are reviewing your applications are not Nigerians, and you need to ensure that you help them, you paint the picture of the right context that you want them to see. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I fully agree with putting your best foot forward. I especially with the point where you said people are multi-talented, multi-potentialite. I personally use the word multifaceted. Sometimes you become confused. You're not very sure. Are you going for the business and an entrepreneurship track? Are you going for the civic leadership or the public management? Just because you've done so many things and you don't know. One of the things I advise people to do is, as much as possible, get a pen and paper. If you fall into such category, list out all the strong points you feel stands you out in each of these areas. You're into fashion designing and all that, list them out. You're into business, list them out. You've volunteered for a nonprofit or in an NGO, you run one, list all these things out. By the time you're able to list all your strong points out, like you're literally producing your strong courses, you should be able to look through them, each one of them, and then you should know which one stands you out, which one has more potential. And sometimes you may discover you have one with more potential, but that's not really what you want to build upon at that point in time. And so it's very important that whilst you may have a very strong point there, it may not be really what you see yourself doing going forward or in the next few years. So it's important to go back to the next one, the one you know you would fully want to build upon. Because at the end of the day, one of the essence of the MWF is they'll be linking you with people in the same jurisdiction as you. So I work with children, I work with young people, I work with youth, teenagers and all that. I'm also a journalist, I do a whole lot. At the same time, when I went to my institute, I saw that there were lawyers in my institute who worked with children. There were journalists there who worked with children. There were doctors, medical doctors who were pediatricians and all that. They also worked with children. So we had a common rallying point. And so for each of these people, one of the things you discover is that we had a focus. We had an idea, we had something we wanted to pursue with children. So it's important that you don't just go for your strongest foot, but you also go for the strong foot that you very much know that wants to lead you. You want to pursue that thing. You want to push on to something much, much greater. So I fully agree with that point. Thank you so much, Funke. I'll be going to Hannah. Hannah, can you tell us a bit about your track and what was it that distinguished you from every other person in your track, in your institute?
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah. I'm a 2019 Mandela Fellow. I was at the University of Delaware. So for me, first of all, that was my first time of applying, and this was the mindset I carried. That I know that in Nigeria, especially with our population, I'll be competing with over 12,000 people to apply for the Mandela Fellowship. So I decided to think about that thing that would stand me out. And for me, I have a background in art. So I am an art therapist. I use art to help children with autism, children with cerebral palsy, and also individuals, women who have faced maybe gender-based violence. So that was actually what I used to apply for the Mandela Fellowship. And it was a very, very outstanding kind of application because many people were not going into that area of using art, as fine art, painting, drawing, to use it for healing and use it as therapy for children. So I actually stood out that even in my interview, the interviewer was like, oh, the last time we had a fellow that did this kind of thing was in 2015. Oh, this is so encouraging. So one thing I would say, pick something that makes you outstanding, because there are going to be so many people who are better than you and who have done so much, who have experience and who have more content than you do. But it still doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply in the same track or in the same field. So me, I was in the civic engagement track. But my advice is pick something that stands you out. Some of you might be singers, some of you might be artists, some of you might be doctors, some of you even beauty queens. Different things. Some of you are church leaders, some of you are youth leaders. You're the youth leader in your church, you're a pastor, the youth pastor. From that, you can also apply. So it's not only about maybe you have invented one tech thing or you're into your medical or everything, but something that stands you out from the crowd. And number two, start your application very early. Do not procrastinate, because procrastination can be the end of you and you will not give your best into it. Then number two, last year I was a reader, and for the questions they ask, they give us points to score the people. So let's say like the first question, they want to know, did this candidate really explain their professional background? Does it align with what they want to do? Have they, efficiently explained what they do and everything? Is it clear to you? Number two, how is the spelling? Some of us don't read our application. So spelling, punctuations are also part of the things they use in scoring. Then number two, they always ask, this candidate, is he always emphasizing on I? That's me. I did this, me, I was this, I was that. They want to see that you are able to work with people, because even they know that you're going to meet different people of different ideologies and different backgrounds. So they want to know, do you control a team? How is leadership friendly with people? Do you know how to, communicate and associate and relate with other people? So that is one key. Then the next one is how you are able to settle conflict, because they know, and that's a very key question that people don't really put. That question is very, very, very important, because as I was a reader last year, they gave us points for those questions, and I can tell you the questions that are really, really important. So they want to know how you were able to solve the conflict, how you were able to work with people with different beliefs and ideology, and they want to see how you can do it. So pick examples. Some people pick their NYSC. There was a time, NYSC is a place where you meet people of different backgrounds. So some people use their NYSC as an example. Some people use their school, the classroom, different instances. Best thing to read. Yes, make your application very interesting. Use simple words, read and enjoy. And when you use good punctuation and good spelling, people can easily follow. So people think that maybe when they use big grammar, that is when they read.
Okay, at this point, I'm not very sure I can hear Hannah. Am I the only one who can't hear her? I think we lost her. So
I think it's the same. No,
okay.
you're not the only one. You're not the only one.
I can't hear her anymore.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, so
Wake
quickly,
up!
Hannah, could you quickly summarize?
Yeah, so being simple, being truthful, don't tell a lie. And some of us have not yet started our project or anything. Maybe what you're doing is just in the idea stage. I think you can still apply. And then when you, in the process of waiting for your interview, start implementing some of the projects, so that when you go for the interview, you have experience, you can talk about what you have done. So I think I'm going to end here because I'm on transit. So this in your application.
Okay, thank you so much, Hannah. I agree with every single thing you said, especially when you talked about being very truthful, being very honest in your essays. I always love giving this example. During my interview, I was talking about the work I was doing and explaining certain things. And the lead panelist at that point in time, he had his phone in his hands. He was busy fidgeting with the phone, fiddling with it. I didn't know what he was doing. And then in the course of talking, I now said, I was making reference to our site. And I said, at this point, the website is down and we've been trying to do some overhaul and all that. And immediately he just showed me the phone and he was like, I'm actually Googling things up and I can see your website is down. And at that point, I felt, oh, if I'd been lying, what would have been the rest of it? So it's very, very important at each and every point. I think every time I talk about global opportunities, accessing opportunities, not just for MWF, it's always important that in as much as you're putting your best foot forward, you're also being very careful that you don't lie. And one thing with people who lie is you end up forgetting sometimes what you said previously. And when you're being asked 2 more questions to buttress a particular point, you just find out that you can't really put a hang on that thing you said previously. So it's important. And I keep asking people one question. What's the joy of winning if you don't win fairly, if you don't win squarely, if you don't win honorably? So you may pass through the needle and at the end of the day, you may scale through. But then as a person, do you have value? Do you have a value system? What values do you live by? Would you want to hold on to an award you know deep within you didn't really win? What's the joy in it? So that very one is very important. And this is an age of internet where in a digital age, your digital footprints would always be searched. They would always be traced. So in as much as you do some of the things you do, try as much as possible to ensure that some of these things are represented online so that when people are going through your applications, I've read applications for over 7 years. I've sat on panels and all that. And I can tell you, it is very easy to know who is saying the truth and who is lying for each application you pick. Sometimes you don't need to go all the way to now Google them or search them online or to really see. As you just start reading, there's just that thing that makes you know, okay, this person is telling the truth, this person isn't telling the truth. If you've done A, there's no point telling the world you did 10 when you know sincerely you didn't do. Win fairly, win squarely. That's where dignity lies, and that's where you'd be happier for it. So thank you so much, Hannah. I'll be going straight to Julius. Julius, I'll be asking you about the 3 tracks. Quickly, can you give us quick takes on those 3 tracks? I know one of the things we want to know about the 3 tracks we have in MWF is don't be so careful about selecting a particular track in the course of your application. If your application is stellar, if your application is top notch, and then they discover you were applying for Civic while you're best fitted for business and entrepreneurship, trust me, they'll redirect you. So I would want Julius to say 1 or 2 things about the 3 tracks quickly. What should people be looking out for? So who should be applying under the B&E, who should be applying under Civic, and who should be applying under public management? Julius, you have the floor, please.
All right, thanks so much, Esther. I really hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So I think for the tracks, number 1 is the Civic leadership track, which I'm currently. I went through at the University of Delaware also. Basically, it's for someone who has some work done in social impact, like you run an NGO, non-profit. Maybe you are volunteering in an NGO. You have worked with a group of people to like create change in your community, and I think it's a right fit for somebody who work in a non-profit space. I think that's that about the civic leadership track. Why the business track is for somebody who, like, you run a business, you have a business, and it's not just any kind of business, but this like a business that is already maybe gaining traction. Like it's not just an idea. I mean, it's not just something you want to start doing, but I mean, you have started a business already, and there's a bit of traction in the business. There's also a social impact part of the business also. How is your business also making impact? If you're able to properly explain that, I mean, that can be a fitting track for you. why the public policy track basically is for like someone who is working in the public space, like you maybe work in the government space. For example, during this our cohort, with 2023 cohort, we had someone who is a counselor. We have somebody who works in in the public sector, you know, trying not like a top role, like maybe a manager or maybe a director or something, or maybe a big role, I mean, right? But somebody who is in that space, who is doing something that is transforming the life of millions of people out there, you know, maybe from your desk, you are helping people to maybe analyze data or something, or you are creating some change through the work you do with that organization or that institution or that public sector that you are working with. So basically, it's mainly for those who are in the public space, like you're working to like transform the lives of the people. So I think that's just what I think about each of the tracks. For me personally, I'm under the civic leadership track. Yeah.
Esther, please, your mic is mute. Yeah.
Yes, I just discovered. Sorry. So I was saying thank you, Julius. And one thing you should know for today is everyone on this call today, on this panel, is on the civic leadership track. That means we didn't put our business inclined into the application. We came from the civic place. And coming from the civic place doesn't necessarily mean we all run NGOs. There are people who don't run non-profits, who are in the civic and leadership track. There are those who are volunteering for non-profits. There are those who don't even volunteer, but for one reason or the other, they engage in community service. So in my cohort then, I had this person who, she doesn't run a non-profit, she doesn't volunteer, but in the course of her activities, she did some community-based work, and that alone was enough to put her on track. So in this age where everybody wants to be a CEO, everybody wants to be an executive director, everybody wants to be a founder, that's not what your track record of leadership is. That is not it. As long as who is a leader? A leader is a person that finds a problem in the society and looks for ways to accomplish that, to solve that problem. And one thing you should know is in the course of solving this problem, you may not necessarily solve it, but the steps you take in seeing that you're able to do something, maybe you wanted to get an over 10 and you end up getting an over 2, it can actually push you. One thing they want to see is there is an innovation coming from you. There is this push, there is a drive for you to want to see and make your society, your community better. So don't be scared and don't go. That's where we also go back to the lying aspect. You don't have to lie that you run a non-profit. You don't have to lie that you volunteered for 50 organizations. You don't have to lie that you've you fed 50 children, you lifted 100 people out of, you don't necessarily need to. If it's as simple as you saw there was this road and you helped clear it and you've done it and this was the result from you clearing that road close to your house and what the issue was before then, trust me, it can bring you in. So you don't necessarily need to. So thank you a whole lot, Julius, for that. I'll be asking Amarachi at this point in time. Amarachi, what's that thing? Can you say something about our applications when you're writing? Should you bother so much about having the word count at the first instance? Should you bother? How do you bring your thoughts together, knowing fully well that there are questions that would be bordering, that will be centered on 250 words, there are those on 150 words, and then you have so many things you want to talk about. How do you go ahead? So from this question, now we'll be moving directly to the questions, to the main essay questions. I really want us to dwell on them. So let me hear from Amarachi. Thank you. Amarachi, are you on the call?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please feel free to go ahead.
Okay. So I'm not sure I can talk. Okay, so that you have to consider is
break down the questions, because usually the questions have sub questions under them. You can have one question that is literally carrying 3 questions, right? So you keep that at the back of your mind. And then, first of all, put out everything that you want to say, ensuring that you capture responses to all of the 3 questions or 2 questions that are represented in that one question. And then put out everything you want to say, make sure that you just pour out your mind, gather as much statistics as you can, to show that you have results to the question. And then when you're done with all of that, you can then start summarizing them, taking out what's irrelevant. By the time you read it again, that's why you should start your applications on time, so that you have time to, when you pour out your heart and respond to everything, step away from the application, take a break, even if it's can you hear me?
No.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. See, make sure that you put out as much, make sure that your as much information as is required, that also addresses any sub questions that are included in the. You might want to step away, take a break, whatever, so that when you come back, while reading it afresh, and then you can, take out what looks irrelevant, what is not really necessary, and what should actually be there. And a trick that you can apply is to attach one paragraph to each sub question, right? So if there are other sub questions, what are your accomplishments, and what steps have you been taking to achieve this and all that? So you can give one paragraph to each sub question, one paragraph to each sub question, and one paragraph to each. That way you ensure that you respond to every sub question. Don't just concentrate on the first one, right? There's a reason why all of those questions are supporting whatever is the first, is the main question. Ensure that you have an answer to every question that is in the main question. Also, 250 words is actually a lot. It might look a little, but it's actually much if you're able to summarize your sentences, if you're able to do a good summary, but ensure that in all whatever you say that you are projecting impact, right? You might want to use, one sentence or 2 sentences to show the activities that you are carrying out. But make sure that something, 1 sentence, 2 sentences, shows impact and results of whatever it is that you're doing. When you're responding to questions, even lessons learned are results of activities. It might not be, a huge impact. It could just be that you learned this lesson, one lesson or the other, and that's the result of the activity. And also make sure to show specificity in responding to the questions, right? Don't generalize when it comes to responding to questions. You want to be specific, and in your storytelling, detail the activity, detail what the actions that you took were. Also ensure to chip in, your skills, because if you look at Mandela Washington Fellowship, is, they say when they describe fellows, they say they are accomplished leaders with a proven track record of leadership. So you want to make sure that your responses show that there's a proven track record of leadership. You also use your responses to showcase your skills, showcase your competencies, showcase your experience in that field, showcase your experience in that sector, whichever track you're applying for. Ensure that you're showing experience, you're displaying skills, you're displaying competencies as you respond to questions. And it's not really much. One lines can always demonstrate impact. If I want to say, and as a result of that, I learned that research is key to designing interventions. That is 1 sentence, but it is loaded. There's experience. It shows there was an activity, and it showed there was a lesson then. So in responding, you should ensure there's specificity. You're telling the story. Most times you feel like it's just the story, but if you're able to capture you are satisfied with the response. So there should be specificity, there should be impact, demonstrate, talk about what you're trying to achieve with whatever action or whatever the situation was, and then what the result. Most times we get carried away with talking about our activities and we don't include our results in it. So you did this, you did that. What was the result? What was the impact of what you did? So I think those are key things when it comes to responding to questions. So pull out your heart, answer everything, and then come back to it and take out what is irrelevant, ensuring that you have demonstrated, you have shown your skills, you have shown your experience, you have demonstrated, you have shown impact, and you have been specific. Don't generalize. Don't say something like when it comes to mistakes, maybe they ask you, tell us about the time when you made a mistake. Don't generalize and be like, when it comes to leadership, mistake is always, tell us the story of when you took an action where because of that project.
Okay, I think I have to take it up from there. We can barely hear you at this point. So thank you, Amarachi. I'm sure you get a much better network. So I'll be going straight now to the application questions. Why we've taken time to lay some of these foundations is because you need to know exactly what is expected, what isn't expected. But then, like I said, the main meat of the matter is the application question. If you're not able to respond to it effectively, accordingly, then you'll be missing out. So I'll be starting first with Funke. I'll be asking you question 1. That's for essay 1. And this is a 250 words question. If you were to answer this question, or when you answered this question, because this is the same thing, this same question has been repeating for over 4 years now from my the last time from my check. And so I'll be asking you, how did you respond to this question, and how can they respond to this question? The question says, provide an overview of your major professional accomplishments from the past year. Provide an overview of your major professional accomplishments from the past year, as well as your long-term goals and aspirations. What motivates you to work in the field that you do? I'll be asking it again. Provide an overview of your major professional accomplishments from the past year, as well as your long-term goals and aspirations. What motivates you to work in this field that you do? This is a 250 word count question. So Funke, if you were to answer this, what would you do? How would you answer it? Everybody have your pen and paper at this point, because this is exactly how you would be able to answer. And if you're able to get it right with question 1, trust me, it's easy for you to flow with the rest of the questions. Funke, please, it's over to you.
All right, thank you, Esther. I think I'm going to start from where you stopped, which is, if you get this first number 1 question right, it's like you can look at the number 1 question as an introduction to the rest of your response. Earlier, I had talked about trying not to be all over the place. So with this number 1 question, you are introducing yourself as who you are and who you are trying to sell to the people reviewing your application. So I'm going to respond to this question. I'm going to give a general overview, and then I'm going to respond as myself. So first of all, when you look at the question, you would see that there are 3 components to the question. So the first component is provide an overview of your major professional accomplishment from the past year. That's the first thing, the first question. The second one is, what are your long-term goals and aspirations? And then the third one is, what motivates you to work in the field that you do? It's important that you know that in responding, you need to answer these three phases of this 1 question, and it has to be within the word limit. So what's your major professional accomplishment in the past year? It's not maybe in the past 5 years, right? It's in the past year. What are those things that you've done this? If I am going to answer this, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah.
We can hear you, but it's not loud.
Okay. So if I'm going to answer, what is overview of my major professional accomplishment from the first year? year, I'm going to right now what is your impact past 1 year? Now you're in the past 1 year, my numbers as your impact in the past 5 years. So I have provided justice to over 7,000 justice. My organization has provided access to justice to over 7,000 incarcerated individuals. Now, I'm just trying to explain that even though the question says in the past year, it's possible that your impact is cumulative. It's not just 2022. Your impact is your work has been since 2019. So is there a way you can phrase your impact, summing up your impact to say, as at 20 or as at the past year, my work has provided access to justice to over 7,000 people. My advocacy has reached over 200,000 people, that sort of thing. You want to put your best foot forward. You want to share the numbers. I'm not saying you should lie. I'm saying, is there a way you can couch that in such a way that you're putting a sum of your impact? Now, that's the first thing. Now, the second thing I would usually do is I usually like to start with a story, especially if the area in which you work is an area that, I mean, you need to put some context to it. So I know that storytelling for me is a big deal when responding to questions like this. So and the number of words is really short, 250 words. So I would say Hassan was arrested and detained for a crime he did not commit. He spent over 500 days in prison, blah, 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 blah. I would do like 2 or 3 lines. And then I would now say, Hassan was one of the over 7,000 people that my organization has represented. Now I'm speaking as a founder. If you are a volunteer, you can also start with the story of one of the people that has been impacted by your work. Again, I started by saying this particular question, is the first question, is the first thing I'm reading. So you want to catch my attention. I know there are people that would respond without using stories, but usually I would like to start with a story. So I've answered the overview. I'm going to the next one. What are your long-term goals? What are my long-term goals and aspirations? It would stem from what I had just said. So I've just talked about how my work has impacted 7,000 individuals. So now I'm now going to talk about how I want my work to reach as many people as possible in Africa. That's me. Whatever it is that is your long-term goal, that is maybe you're trying to effect system change. You're trying to I know whatever it is that is your long-term goal, it has to stem from what your accomplishment is. So you cannot be talking about an accomplishment in advocacy, and then your long-term goal is something totally different that doesn't have any correlation. It has to flow. Then the final one, which for me is always very important in responding to questions like this, what motivates you to do the work that you do? I mean, we all want to do good. Everybody listening to me now, most likely you're interested in applying under the civic engagement track. And if you're in civic engagement, it means that you like to do good, you're altruistic and all of that. Good. But what is going to stand you out? If there are 1,000 people doing prison work, for me, for instance, what is going to make mine to stand out? If there are 1,000 people that are working with ladies in IDP camp, what is going to make you stand out? For me, I would always say, what is the personal story that you have to sell? Why are you the best person to do this work? So you might have a personal story. I have a personal story. My father was incarcerated, was detained for a crime he didn't commit, blah, blah, blah. That is what I always sell, and it works for me. Now, let's assume you don't have a direct personal story. Is it possible that the first time you went volunteering for this particular course, it changed something about you? You could not sleep. Can you paint a picture of how you could not sleep? Can you paint a picture of how, even though you were not directly affected by it, someone that was directly affected by it, and it changed your life, and then you decided you're going to invest your life, your time, your skills, everything into doing this work? This question is supposed to arouse empathy. It's supposed to arouse empathy? Is it empathy? Yes. Well, not I think empathy, but also emotions. Yes, I should read this and feel like, oh my God, like this person felt this way, and this person decided to do this. Do you understand? So you don't want to answer like just any other person. You want to answer and leave a picture in the mind of your readers, right? So in responding to this question, just to summarize, make sure that whatever you are writing, you're leaving a picture that they're like, oh, this person badly needs to be here. Also understand that you will not be the only person who is doing that work that is applying. So how do you understand that? And also, you don't want to lie, because if you get to the interview stage, you're going to defend whatever it is that you said. So paint the picture, make sure you answer the 3 arms of this question. Of course, you make sure you write within the 250 words. And what else? Yeah, I think that's about, what comes to my mind right now. If you can, please tell a story, make it very short, paint a very vivid picture in their mind, and yeah, you'll be good to go.
Thank you so much. Okay, if you really followed everything she has said, trust me, you'll be on a very great path towards writing your very first question. And to show you the strength of this particular question, it's 250 words. There are just 2 questions that has with 250 words. This is one, and then the next one. The rest are 150. That's to tell you that there is an emphasis that is placed on it. Now, to buttress what she has said earlier and to also make it stronger, she said you can't go wrong with storytelling. Okay, it's in my own words. You can never go wrong with storytelling. But then don't be in a hurry to tell stories that you're so pushy and you start saying, that was how, and then I went to, and then I went, and it will become so boring. So one of the things you may want to do is at the end of your writing, sit down, edit your work, possibly give it out to someone to help you go through. That way, that person it will be very easy for the person to be able to pinpoint. And then don't just give it to any kind of person. Give it to someone you know would really have the time to sit and vet your application. Another thing is, in answering any of the questions, I'll be asking the next person. One of the things you will try to do, this was one of the things that helped me greatly. I applied on the very first, I got in on my very first trial. And as a matter of fact, I was applying, I was still writing my essays when I was trying to tidy up when it was announced. It was the deadline already. So they shifted it, they added 2 more hours. So for that remaining 2 hours, I sat down and then concluded everything and sent before the final deadline that very day. And that was how I got in. And one of the things that helped me to get in was I was able to break down the questions into smaller components. You don't just jump and answer the questions as a unified whole. These questions are like the questions we were being asked in school. Question A would carry A, B, C, D, E. They have grandchildren. So if you're not careful enough to dissect those grandchildren and answer them accordingly, you may answer one part and then you leave out. That's why Funke has taken time to do what? Explain how you should answer from A to B to C. And then if you're not very so good at storytelling, feel free to flow. As long as you have a very good story, even without starting up with a very good storytelling pointer, trust me, your application will still sail through. So thank you so much, Funke. You also said leave a vivid picture in mind. And I think I agree with you on that one because you're a living example to that. And okay, I'll be going straight to Zigwe for question 2. And Zigwe, the question says, based on your understanding of your preferred institute's track of study, what skills and knowledge do you hope to gain from the fellowship that you would not be able to develop through other opportunities? How will you use these skills and that knowledge to enhance your activities in your community within the next 3 to 5 years? I'm going to read it again. Based on your understanding of your preferred fellowship that you would not be able to develop through based on your understanding of your preferred institute track of study, what skills and knowledge do you hope to gain from the fellowship that you would not be able to develop through other opportunities? How will you use those skills and knowledge to enhance your activities in your community within the next 3 to 5 years? This is also a 250-word question. So over to you, Zigwe. How should we answer this question?
Thank you, Esther. First, I'm sorry, this is my power is out. So I like the way Esther took her time to break down that question. I don't know if you got what she was trying to do, but I also had to break it down here so we understand. First, there's the part that says, that's asking if you understand the track that you're applying for, or what the track that you're applying for entails. And then following that, it's now asking you what skills are in line with that track. What skills do you think you can or should develop under that track? And then it also is asking, why MWF? Why the US? Don't you think you can get these skills any other place, or even in Nigeria where you are? Is this not a skill where you can just take an online course? So, and then the last one, they want to know if you even have that vision of coming back to also use these skills that you are planning on developing through the fellowship in the work that you're doing or where you are. So I would want to begin with, or for me, let's say I began with talking about the skills and the kind of knowledge that I was interested in, and things that I had been looking out to learning. So I did not start by saying, oh, I want to learn, let's say, for example, things or skills that are around civic engagement track, critical thinking, collaboration, networking, community engagement, community organizing, and mobilization. I did not make it look like I had no idea about these things, because the truth is, people, they also know that it's not like for you to apply, for you to have the track record and experience, it's not like you're a novice in this area. You know what you're doing. All you're trying to do is to pad up your experience, is to learn more and to improve also. So it was me telling them things like, I want to gain more experience in the line of, I mentioned a skill, and then I also explained why I wanted to gain that added knowledge and why I wanted to develop that skill better. Yes, so I was telling them that I knew what skill is required for civic engagement track, meaning that I've done my assignments and homework. And I have used this skill, but I believe that there's room for improvement. And in reaching out or applying for MWF, I'm hoping to gain that improvement and that capacity development through the program. Secondly, I moved on to the fact that I believe that there are organizations, I mentioned specific organizations that I was looking out to engaging with that have had track record of results in using these experiences or using these skills and knowledge in achieving their own goals. So it's you saying that organization or that particular skill has worked so well in that area or with this organization that I cannot find that organization here, or I cannot find those set of people where I am right now. And I believe that the opportunity of getting MWF will provide me that avenue or those set of people or that organization to be able to build on these skills that I'm looking for. Next is, I also stated the fact that I had a plan coming back, because them asking you in 3 to 5 years, they want to know, because one of the things is, I don't know if we have read it or if we just decided to pass it, is they expect you to come back home and stay 2 years before you start thinking of running to go and live permanently in the US or take up a job in the US. They expect that you are coming to serve again in your community. So they want to know that you have a plan. A person who has a plan to give back and use whatever they are learning through a program is practically saying that I intend to come back and I'm really committed to the work that I'm doing. I'm not just saying it because I want you to select me. So I had to talk about the things that the plan I already had to improve the work that I'm already doing, and how I feel that these skills that I stated earlier link up to these plans and vision that I have coming back to Nigeria to improve the work that I'm already doing. So I work in the areas of good governance. I work in the areas of youth development and active citizenship in the areas of elections and everything to do with policy advocacy. So for me, building up on my advocacy skills, building up on my community organizing skills, especially when it comes to issues of, let's say, elections, the issues of youth participation in politics and governance, was going to help me, because I see how our environment is not as let me not say welcoming, but conducive when it comes to issues of, let's say, protest, issues of pushing out for advocating for things. It's not so friendly. We have things like police clamping down on you, but we have seen over time how successful those protests are, and how you will see 1,000 people coming out for protests. But in Nigeria, it's really hard. When you say come out for protests, you find only you and your friends that will just want to help your ministry, not like they really believe. So these are things that I put forward, saying that I would want to understand how the system works there, how they're able to rally people and get people to buy into that vision, so that I can come and implement that kind of thing, especially because of the context that we have in Nigeria. And they know what's happening when it comes to governance in Nigeria. They know what's happening when it comes to elections and youth participation. So I'm sure they could relate to this. So just an overview of what I just said. I made sure that I listed skills that were related to civic engagement and the work that I am doing, even in civic engagement. I did not just go and Google skills, because sometimes that's what we do. We just Google skills and then we're just putting random skills. Let there be skills that are related to the work that you're doing or the work that you intend to continue doing. And then tie it to why you cannot get it any other place. So it could be maybe an organization you've been following, or a movement you've been following, or some kind of impact that you have seen over time. Reference something that stands out and cuts across what you're doing. And then talk about your plans coming back. What's the plan that you have, and how will these skills be used in improving the work that you're doing? I hope that I have been able to help out with that. Thank you, Esther.
I thought you were going to say, I hope I've been able to convince and not confuse you.
My dear, I was tempted.
So thank you. You did a great one in answering this. So basically, in reiterating what she has said, this question just wants to know the skills you have at the moment. There are so many opportunities at this point in time that are global opportunities, internationally funded, and they just want to know what skill do you have? What skill are you hoping to gain there that no other fellowship would have given to you? So it's a place where you really need to sit down and really ask yourself deep questions. And this starts from self-introspection, right? What do you know? What do you have at this point? Where are you heading towards? What do you want to do with what you have at this point in time? What do you think you need going forward? So if you can't place a hand on what you have, then you can't even really know what you need going forward. It's what you have in your hands that will determine how far or what it is you want. That's why I said earlier, remember, what do you want to gain? What do you want to achieve? In trying to put your best foot forward, which are you looking forward to? What do you really want to gain? Is it the network from the people? Sometimes the skill or what you may want to gain from the whole fellowship may not necessarily be it may be the people you're meeting, and those people will be able to help you collaborate, partner, and you guys are able to move forward. It may not necessarily be the teachings they'll be teaching you there at the institutes or the places you may be going. It might just be even within your African fellows, the 20, how many of you that may be grouped in one school at the end of the day. So you really need to know, what are you having in your hands? What do you have in your hands? What do you want to receive more? When you open these hands with the things you have, what do you hope to receive? And you also need to know, please, could you mute yourself? You also need to know your long-term, like your medium-term goals, between 3 to 5. It's like a medium-term goal. So what are your medium-term goals? What do you really hope to achieve in the next 5 years? That thing you want to achieve in the next 5 years would pivot to saying, because I want to be here with my organization, because I want to be here in the work I'm doing, because I want to be here with my business, because I want to be at this particular point, I need these skills that I'll be getting from these people to help me move from point A to point B. If you're not able to know where you're going, you can't even know what you want to ask, what you want to get. Because trust me, the schools, like I said earlier, you'll be placed in institutes, that's in schools, in universities that do things similar to what you do. So my school was Indiana University, Bloomington. My school was a media-focused school, and then they had things to do with children. So everything was being aligned. The lines were connecting. If you can't say what you're doing, what you want to achieve, then it will be difficult to know what your long-term goals are. And trust me, they really want you to come back and develop your community. They don't want you to finish and remain there and japa. They want you to go learn and come back. So thank you so much once more, Zigwe, for that very punchy and insightful response. So now we're done with the 250 words questions. We'll be going straight to the remaining short essay questions. We're done with the long essay questions. And this one says, I'll be asking Amarachi this question. This question says, a fundamental concern for others is, Nelson Mandela said, a fundamental concern for others in our community, in our individual and community lives, would go a long way in making the world the better place that we passionately dream of. Public and community service are essential responsibilities for leaders. What needs do you believe are most evident in your community? How are you working to address these needs? I'll ask it again. Nelson Mandela said, a fundamental concern for others in our community, in our individual and community lives, would go a long way in making the world the better place we so passionately dream of. Public and community service are essential responsibilities for leaders. What needs do you believe are most evident in your community? How are you working to address these needs? Amarachi, please, you have the floor at this point.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, please.
Okay, so in this case, it's making reference now to your personal beliefs and your perception of, the problems around you and what you're doing to address those problems. So basically, is you telling your own story. What are you passionate about? Because it's talking about how we're passionately driven to certain things in our society or in the communities around us. So you want to talk about what you're passionately driven to and what you see as a problem now. Because remember that when you're responding to Mandela Washington Fellowship questions, it's an individual journey. You're talking about your own journey, right? So what is the problem that you see in society? What is it that you perceive as a problem in society? And you start talking about what you do to address. Okay, thank you for posting the question. So it's basically, if you look at that, you see that it's talking about what you're passionately driven to, and what it is that you believe is most evident in your community. Each of us are in various sectors because we believe these are problems, right? What I believe is most evident is what I'm working to address. What you believe is different. So you're going to come at that question from a personal point of view and then talk about how you're working to address these needs. So first of all, you talk about the problem, what you see as a problem. If I want to respond to that question, I would look at the big picture of what I do. I work with infant health, I work in the infant health and well-being sector. Why do I believe it's a problem, right? Because I feel like it's if you're going to have a society full of wholesome individuals who contribute positively to society, then you must give them a strong foundation in early childhood, right? I believe that this is a pathway to solving societal problems. If individuals are well grounded in early childhood, if they are given the best start, if they're exposed to environments that promote their healthy emotional development, mental development, physical development, and I believe that if they're able to get it in early childhood, then we would have a society of individuals who are wholesome and who contribute positively to society. So for me, this is my own perspective. This is what I see as a problem, and this is the area I'm working in. So I would state why I believe this is a problem, right? Even come up with statistics to show that this is a problem, and even show why I'm passionate about this. If I want to talk about my own aspect. It will be from when I had a daughter, when I had my first daughter, right? And I understood at that point that if I get it right with her at this foundational stage, that she will grow up to be an individual to become an individual who is grounded and who can make, you know, great decisions in wherever she finds herself, who is expressive, who is self-confident, and who can, you know, contribute positively. So I got that, and that was my passion. That was where my passion for infants began. It was me having my own child and seeing that there was a problem. Nigeria had a high number, you know, a high rate of infant mortality, and newborns were dying. You know, these were the various, you know, causes of the problem. And then when I identified what the problem was, these are the steps that I'm taking to solve those problems. So I started to talk about, I would start talking about my activities, right? Because that I'm taking to address this problem that I have identified in society. So it's you coming in from your personal story, what you're passionately driven to, and what steps you're taking, what you're passionately driven to, what is the problem really that your passion is addressing, and what are the steps that you're taking. So if you run an organization and there are various steps that various activities or projects that you guys have in place, now you talk about those projects and also talk about the impact of those projects. So I can say that we strengthen healthcare in underserved communities by providing healthcare centers to ensure that mothers and babies in underserved communities now have access to healthcare. That way, curbing the high rate of infant mortality in those communities, right? I can also talk about other projects that we carry out where we educate, you know, expectant and nursing mothers on best practices for infant care to ensure that these infants are exposed to effective and efficient postnatal care, right? And then I can talk about, you know, our neonatal care packs that we give to them. And for everyone that I mentioned, I would also mention that so far we have donated 240 of these packs or 5,000 of these packs, making sure that these mothers are now able to care for their infants with our neonatal care, you know, packs. So basically, it's you telling what you're passionately driven to, how this is a problem, and what steps you're taking to solve this problem in your society. Yeah.
Thank you, Amarachi. Everything you've explained is 100% in line and in sync. And so just to add to what you've said, the question wants to know, what else are you doing? What else are you doing apart from the core thing you've been doing, apart from the core work you've been doing? Is there any other thing your attention goes to? Now, sometimes this question can be a bit tricky because you may want to go to pick up an example that is totally different, totally off what you've been talking about. One thing I'll tell you is whatever example you want to pick, whatever thing you want to say should still be in sync, should be in line with what you've been saying over time. Excuse me. That way, I always use this analogy of an invincible dot, a line that is connecting some dots. It's like there are too many scattered things, and then you need to trace and find your way. It's like a Google map. You're trying to navigate all the corners and cuts to get to your destination. And now whatever corner and cut you decide to go through, that's whatever answer, whatever response you decide to pick in answering your question, we should see similarities in your responses. One of the things you will note if your application is a stellar one is that your answers sometimes are being repeated because you're saying the same thing in question 1, and when I pick question 4, it's still almost the same thing. So that means question 1 is a standalone. Question 4 on its own is a standalone. Question 5 is a standalone. I could read question 5 and I understand exactly where you're going or what you're doing. But then when I'm able to connect your question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there is this synergy amongst them that says, okay, this guy really knows what he's doing. It has flowed. It's just flowing naturally. So that's one thing you want to do. The MWF is very big on community service. It's big on you not just living for yourself, but you being able to make an impact in your society, making an impact in your immediate environment. So what needs do you believe are most evident in your community? Whatever you're solving, you could still tie it back to that same thing you're doing at the moment. So these are the needs I've noticed in my immediate community. Maybe whatever it is you're doing now may not be serving the community where you are. So you're making an intervention. I work with children and all. Not all the children are in the community where I stay. So I have communities, book clubs where we go and reach out to some of these children. They are not in my immediate community, but then in your own very immediate community, are there things you've been able to see? So you're not saying, they say think global and act local. You're not reaching Zarmaganda, you're not reaching Zamfara, when right there in Plateau where you are, there's a problem, but then you're ignoring the one in Plateau and then you're going off to Zamfara or Lagos. I hope you understand. Thank you once more, Amarachi, for answering that question. So we'll be going to the next one, question 4. The Mandela Washington Fellowship values diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and strives to include and support diverse identities and ideas in all program design and implementation. How do you approach working with people who have identities and ideas that are different from your own? How have you used inclusion leadership to resolve conflict and achieve progress despite your differences? So this is one question that I would want to test some certain leadership reserves of yours, leadership skills of yours. I would ask it again. The Mandela Washington Fellowship values diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and strives to include and support diverse identities and ideas in all program design and implementation. How do you, this is where the main question starts from now. Question 1, how do you approach working with people who have identities and ideas that are different from your own? The second part says, how have you used inclusion leadership to resolve conflict and achieve progress despite the differences? I'll be asking Hannah to please respond to this. I'll be asking Hannah to please respond to this. Hannah, are you there, please? Hannah, are you there? Okay, if Hannah isn't there, can Funke please help answer the question? Okay, I think, Funke, are you there?
I am, sorry, I think I was muted. I heard the question, but I don't know if you directed it to me.
No, I was initially asking Hannah to answer, but it seems she's not on the call anymore, so I'm asking you to do justice to it.
Okay, just give me a second. Let me go through the question. That's the question on DEI.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, so first thing first is to understand the reason why this question is coming in at this time. The Mandela Washington Fellowship and just the experience of going to the US exposes you to a very diverse, stop the noise. Exposes you to a very diverse and a very diverse audience in terms of gender, in terms of sexuality, in terms of different areas. And so one of the rationale behind this question is to be sure that in some way in your work, you're already thinking inclusion. And also that, of course, when you go to the US, if you get in, your adaptation will not be very hard for you. So now I'm going to just talk about how I answer this question. I always, again, like to answer using telling a story. And so I remember, I think I answered this question by making reference to a time that I was in a community of people who had different belief system outside of my belief system. They were from a different culture, they were from a different belief system. It was an event I had gone for outside of the country, and I just met myself in a different group entirely, and then a conflict came up. And in the course of the conflict coming up, we had the opportunity of using different methods to address the conflict. And at the end of the day, we chose the most peace-worthy situation. Now that's how I answer this question. I understand that not everybody would have stories like me. In responding to this question, it's important that you, first of all, understand what diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility means in the light of this question. So if you're going to give examples, you can give examples from the point of, let's say, accessibility, for instance, or inclusion. You can give example of your experience with persons living with disability, your experience with persons from a different, with a different sexuality, even experience with a different gender, right? Now, even if you don't have a story, so I'm going back to the question, how do you approach working with people who have identities and ideas that are different from yours, from your own? I don't think you can answer this question without making reference to a time that you did approach, you did experience something like this. I don't think it's possible. They are asking, even if you don't have a story, again, like I said, you need to paint a picture. You need to tell them, okay, this is how I approach it. I understand that, we all have different belief system, or we all have different identities, and I understand the place of inclusion and all of that. The other arm to this is, how have you used inclusive leadership to resolve conflicts and achieve, there's a whole lot of happening right here. I have kids and I'm just trying to multitask. How have you used inclusive leadership to resolve conflict and achieve progress despite differences? Again, like I keep saying, the best way to respond to this, of course, also bearing in mind that we have just 150 words, is to paint a picture of how you've actually done it. Let's say you don't have a picture. Is it possible that for the organization that you work for, you have core values, and one of your core values is inclusion? You can mention that. You can also mention, maybe a scenario in your family where somebody in your family is a totally, has diverse views than everybody in the family, and the person is seen like a black sheep, and then you are the person who brokers peace in the family. So, just to summarize my point, I understand that not everybody listening to me might really understand, what DEI means. So first of all, understand the concept of diversity, equity, inclusion. Understand that you can look at this from a gender lens. You can look at this from the lens of persons living with disability. You can look at this from a sexuality lens. You can also even look at this from a faith lens. I think you may have a lot of stories. Maybe you're a Christian and then you work with Muslims, or you work with persons of other faiths. It can also be politics. So don't restrict yourself to maybe what you think they are looking at, in the US, maybe sexuality and gender. You can be politics. You have somebody that you work with that has a very strong political view different from yours. How have you been able to work with them? You can give them funny scenarios, like, when the political arena is tense in Nigeria, what you did on Twitter, how you're able to broker peace. But don't forget that it must not be far from your previous answer. Don't go and paint a scenario that is totally different from what you've been saying. You want to make sure that you're painting, your narrative is flowing from the top. So when you get to this question, you're still painting, a narrative, the kind of narrative you want them to see as a leader that has ambitions, that has goals, and is also very inclusive. So yeah, those are my thoughts for now.
Okay, thank you so much, Funke. You've just to add to what you've said, don't be afraid of using any scenario to answer this. When I was answering this question during my time, I've always been a church girl, so I used my church leadership skill at that point. The youth fellowship, I was the secretary of the whole district that's comprising over 30 churches, the youth secretary comprising of the youth fellowship comprising over 30 churches. Now, at the leadership level, we had one or two scuffle, and we wanted these ideas. Some people were saying no, another person was saying yes. And then what did I have to do? I had to sit down, call the house to order and all that. At the end of the day, I ensured there was a win-win situation. That was the simple response I used. And it got I think I remember during my interview, I was still asked that particular question to throw more light on it. And by the time I finished talking, everybody was like, So don't be afraid. It mustn't be in your professional setting. It mustn't be in your office. It mustn't be the situation where you were the organ at the top and then everybody needed to bow and listen to you. If it's in your family setting, there was a conflict and it was resolved, it's acceptable. If it's in school, there was a conflict amongst your classmates and it was resolved, it's acceptable. If it's amongst your friends, there was a conflict involved and then you stepped in, brought in your leadership skills and resolved things, trust me, it's acceptable. So don't just limit yourself to one sphere of response or one cadre of influence. as long as there are different mountains of influence you're operating on, feel free to use any of them, as long as it still points down to the answer. We just have to look for a way to live with each other. We have to look for a way to support people. We have to look for a way to, there must be conflict amongst us. People would misunderstand what you say. People will read your messages in different tones. People will read it in different, in different tones. And then we've seen people say, why did you respond this way? Or why did you type this way? And meanwhile, in your own mind, you have nothing in mind. So you just need to look for a way. How do you resolve conflicts? Because one of the reasons they're asking this question is, when you go over there, you're going to be placed in an institute with people from different backgrounds. You may even be the only Nigerian in your own school. During my time, we were 3 Nigerians, and none of the Nigerians was my roommates. We all shared flats. My own flat, I shared it with a Kenyan. She was also a journalist like me, doing things with children and all that. So if you're not able to work with people from different backgrounds, you're not able to sit down and understand where they are coming from, that means when you go there and you meet people with different ideologies, different reference points, any small thing, you could start a para for them. And when you don't start a para for them like this, issue go there, they go deport you. So they want to know, this question is a pointer to what would happen when you go over there. How would you work with your cohorts? So you just sit down, look for any of the responses, any of the scenarios. You won't tell me you don't have conflict. Even today, I'm sure you've had conflict with one cadre of influence or the other. So it's very easy. So we're going straight to Julius. Julius, there's another component of the MWF called the PDE. During my time, I didn't even go for the question. I didn't answer it because I had things. It's a different ball game. I don't want to go into the details for now. So Julius is still in the US. The idea is after 6 weeks in the US, you come back. But then 6 weeks that you're supposed to be in the university, after 6 weeks, they move you, in quotes now, for practicum. They move you for IT. Let me use that word, IT. So Julius is doing his IT in the US. His mates are back. His cohorts, his colleagues are back, but he's still in the US for an extra 6 weeks. He's working in a firm doing IT. During my time, my flatmate, she was with the Voice of America. So when we're coming back, the person from Kenya, when we're coming back, Sharon didn't come back. Sharon stayed back to work with Voice of America for 6 extra weeks, reporting, doing every other thing she needed to do at that point in time. So Julius is doing something like that. But that is a very different, it's not compulsory you answer this question. If you think you would want to stay extra 6 weeks, and it's a very competitive one. So some people don't even answer the question. They just want to get in and ask. Oh, but I'll encourage you to answer this question. I would encourage you to not tick no to that particular question, tick yes. And there are 2 questions underneath it. So I'll allow Julius to read them out. I've sent them to him. I'll allow him to read them out, and then he'll explain to us. Trust me, if 100 people were selected for MWF, people that are selected for people that are selected for the PDE are like 10, 15. So that's to show you it's another competition on its own. So Julius was lucky and favored enough to get in. So he'll be reading the question, but this particular question normally comes at the end of the 5 application questions. It's an extra. So Julius, you have the floor. Please go ahead, read the questions, and let's know how you were able to answer that question and how it's been helping you so far. Julius, please, you have the floor.
All right, thanks so much, Esther. Currently looking for the question.
Check your DM.
Okay. Okay, once again, good evening, everyone. My apologies for exiting the call. I needed to do something else that was very important. So provide a brief description of your current work, both professionally and in your community, if applicable, and your long-term goals and aspiration. If you are selected for a PDE, this will be used as a short profile. Oh, what am I reading? I hope that's this will be used as a short profile to share with your US organization, 150 words. Then the main question: what are your goals for the professional development experience, including the specific transferable skills and knowledge you hope to gain? How would you apply an experience working with a US organization to your work after returning returning to your home country, 250 words. All right. I think for me, I'm going to use myself as an example and how I, applied for this specific question, because for me, PD was like a major thing. I know for a lot of my colleagues, they were really not interested in staying back. Like some people have family, they needed to go, some people need to resume back to work, But for me, like I was looking out for this opportunity or something I've been like, chasing, for the fourth time that I've applied for this opportunity. I applied 4 times for MWF. I think I got into the semi-final in 2020. I was interviewed. I didn't make it through. And I kept on applying. So don't give up. Whether you get it now or you don't get it, just keep going. So one of the things I mentioned, exactly, I'm going to read the way I wrote it. So because I've responded to question earlier, like 4 questions or 5 questions earlier, explaining my professional background, what I do, how I'm doing the work, where I'm doing the work, and all of that, So I work in the education space, and one of the most important things that I explained was to tell a story of how the work that I'm doing, I'm unable to properly get like professional development experience in Nigeria. Most of the things I've done in my life, I started them myself. Right from school, I started my first foundation. So I really did not have a work, like I have not really worked in a structured organization. So what I've done basically is to like start something. So my first foundation that I started was in 2017, 2018. I started from school. The next thing I'm doing right now, which I started in 2021, was like a business I started on my own, which I really do not have so much work experience. So I was able to tell that story of like, okay, I have been doing this for so time, and I have properly not had the experience of working in a structured organization like a company or like an agency that I can learn about organization culture, I can learn about curriculum development, because I was working in the education space. So I painted that picture, explaining my situation to them. And then secondly, I mentioned the skills I want to learn, in alignment with what I have been talking about from the first, second, third. So I did not speak out of point, because you can't afford to like say something else, when you get to the PD question, because everything must align. So I mentioned some of the skills I want to learn, in addition to what I've listed before, which was like, I mentioned grant writing earlier. I mentioned project management. I mentioned a lot of things, which was more professional. But now I'm looking at me running an organization, an education organization in Nigeria. So I mentioned I want to learn curriculum development. And this curriculum development is basically to help create a curriculum that can empower the students, like young people, to start learning about career opportunity before they get out of school. So they're able to properly get what they want to do right before they leave secondary school. So I was specific about that. And also I want to learn how to build teachers community, focus group discussions with teachers. So I outlined everything one by one and why I think this is going to improve my work when I return back to Nigeria. So I also mentioned that I want to learn more about the US government education policies that we can somehow adopt and then remodify to our own culture, our own system in Nigeria. So I explained everything, and I also at the end of the day explained how this will amplify my 5-year plan, my 5-year goals. Like, if I'm able to get this is what it will become for me. And after that, I also explained that coming to the US to work in the US, I'm not just going to take from the host organization, I will also be contributing. So I listed what I'll be contributing to the organization, because I see a lot of people sometimes who apply for opportunities like this, they will always talk about what they want to get. Like, I want to get this, I want to get that. But you're also not mentioning what you will be giving back to that host organization, right? What exactly will you be bringing back to them? Why would they give you this opportunity? Because they also want to like learn from you. They want to gain some practices that they may not know, which is like the truth, right? So I was able to like explain, okay, coming to the US, I'll also be sharing my problem solving skills, working with the people of color, like the Black community in Nigeria, like working with people in marginalized communities, bringing that experience into what they do here. So I'm properly able to also help them in project planning, program development, and also to infuse our own practice locally into their own current activities here. Because if you observe critically, you see that there is increase in the number of people leaving the country, maybe moving to the United Kingdom, moving to the United States. So there's increase in people leaving Africa. They are coming to the United States to like start their life and all of that. So they also give birth here, and when they give birth, some of the curriculum here is not culturally responsive to some of these kids. So they take time, they struggle a lot in the classroom. So these are some of the things I outlined, and like these are the examples I shared. And luckily, I got the opportunity, and I was posted to an exact organization that is doing the same thing I want to do, working with the people of color, working in different part of the United States, and it has been an exciting experience for me so far. So I think those are the little things I want to share. I think that should be helpful. If you have any question, you can ask me. Sorry, Madam Esther, I'm done.
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to connect on my device because my laptop is shutting down in a bit. It's raining here, so we can't turn on. But then thank you so much for responding to that. Like I said, I'd really advise everyone applying, as long as you know you're not in a hurry to return back to Nigeria. It's very, very important you apply.
Esther, you're muted.
You're muted, madam.
Oh, sorry about that. And I've been talking since I didn't know. I had to switch from my laptop to my phone. So I was saying, thank you, Julius. I will still advise each and every one of us to apply for the PDE. It's a very important and very impactful opportunity. If I had no firsthand knowledge of that, my flatmate, like I said earlier, she was with the Voice of America, and then I know the connections she made, connections alone from that opportunity, that extra 6 weeks. I know how much it impacted on her work as soon as she returned back to Kenya, and then proceeded to NTV Kenya and all that. So if you really know where you're headed, if you really know what you want to do, from Julius's response, you would see everything we've been saying is still tallying. You need to have a plan. You need to have your goals. You need to have a short-term, medium-term goal between 3 to 5. It's the knowledge of where you want to go, what you want to do with yourself in the next few months, next few years will determine how you apply for this program. So don't just apply randomly, I beg you. Don't just apply randomly. Before you sit down to start writing your question, your essays, sit down and really have a self introspection. Ask yourself deep questions. What do I really want out of this? Some just applied randomly and they got in randomly and their lives remained random to an extent. And some were very, very intentional with what they wanted. They put in all their best. They went there. They were very intentional and they are here. I can tell you that 60–70% of what I do, the funds I get to run some of my programs, build the playgrounds we build across Nigeria and all that, they all came from the connections I made while in the US. So I didn't have to go and start doing looking for extra sources of funding and all that. I was being intentional at some point. So our level of intentionality then, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, is not as high as it is now. I keep saying some things. If I know what I didn't know then, I don't know how to explain it now. Trust me, it would have been a different ball game altogether. So you have people at your beck and call now. Don't just apply randomly, I beg you. Put in your best foot for the PDE. As a matter of fact, when I was applying, I didn't really see the need for the PDE because like, no, go do 6 weeks first, come back. It was when I got to the US, I really understood what the PDE was all about. And I was like, I didn't do well at this point. So I'm encouraging you. I didn't want to bring Julius in earlier because I wanted us to finish with the very compulsory questions before going in. But since we've dealt with this, Thank you once more, Julius. And if you really want more questions or you really want more insights, you can feel free to reach out to Julius and he will respond to you. So we're doing the very last question. Resilience, especially in the face of sudden change, is a critical quality in effective leaders. Provide an example of how you have demonstrated resiliency during challenging times. How has this experience influenced your work? I'll read it out again. Resilience, especially in the face of sudden change, is a critical quality in effective leaders. Provide an example of how you have demonstrated resilience during challenging times. How has this experience influenced your work? So I'll be asking Zigwe, if she's on the call, to please provide answer to this question.
Okay, Esther, thank you. Resilience. Okay, resilience, again, we have one question with multiple sections. And I would also emphasize on the fact that you need to understand the different sections that this question is focused on. First, it asks if to provide an example of how you have demonstrated resiliency and how the experience influenced your work. So it's not about how big a problem has been. Sometimes maybe we think that we hear words, the word resilience, and we start to calculate, what am I going to say? Hey, which challenge? I don't run a company. I don't own an organization. I don't own a business. I'm not. But then it could be as little as, let me start with, I know, well, it didn't give a time frame. So yes, we can go all the way there. There have been issues of fuel scarcity. There have been issues of COVID. Sometimes maybe, and then there have been issues of people being laid off from work. I'm just listing all of these things. I don't know which one you can connect to, but I want you to think broadly which one has hit you as a challenge. And COVID could be that you had to move from physical work in the office or even field work. We're talking about civic engagement. It's a lot of community engagement. It's a lot of field work. It's a lot of working with people. Did you have to stop work physically to move online? How well versed were you with using technology? Did you personally have a problem? Or even if you are very knowledgeable about technology, how was it easy working with the rest of your team at work with technology? Okay, yes, all of you know how to use laptops and Zoom and all, but did everybody have internet connection? Did everybody have power or light all the time? So these are things that, how easy was it to get to your beneficiaries or participants, or to communicate effectively? So even if you and your team were good, were your participants comfortable enough using technology and all of that? So this could have been a challenge for you. It could also be, I'm listing all the possible scenarios before addressing this. It could also be fuel subsidy. Okay, now you were faced with the issue of your salary is not enough to cater for everyday work, or price hike and all, and cost of maybe the project you're doing went short up, and then the funds that you had, the budget had already been released. You had to. So how were you able to navigate through these challenges and still stay on course? What were the solutions that, it might not be only you, it could be you bringing about an initiative that your team works with. It could also be that you didn't even know what to do, but you reached out to somebody or a team member to rub minds. So it could also be that there was an issue of, let's say, a staff left in the middle of a project, or a team member left, and you really needed somebody because that particular position was very important. Let's say an M&E person, or a finance person, or a communications person, and not everybody could. How were you able to navigate that and still get the results that you needed to get for that work that you are doing? And then how has that experience or that challenge made you to develop better or restructure your work so that that situation does not occur again, or when that situation occurs, you are ready to tackle it head on? They want to know that this question is just saying that they understand that there are challenges in life, that you're not perfect and situations are not perfect, but that when those challenges come up, whether during your fellowship or in the work that you're doing, you would be able to prefer solutions or work with your team members to get a resolution that will help your challenge. They want to know that when situations go bad, you will not just drop the initiative you are working on and move on to the next one, because there are certain people that when challenges come, they just drop and on to the next. They don't like wahala. They want to know that as a leader, you are able to actually bring about, create solutions and work with your team to bring about those solutions. They want to also know that finally about experience, how the experience has helped with your work. They want to know that you're able to apply your challenges and experiences that you come across to build better, because that means that you learn from this experience. That means that you're able to bring about sustainability. It shows sustainability of projects. They know that at the end of the day, whatever work you're doing, after facing challenges, you need to be able to get solutions that are sustainable over time. You need to be able to learn from these situations that you experience for a better or more effective results. So I would say that's it for me. So overview, understand that there are some of us who say no challenge in Jesus' name. No, it's not a prayer. They know. So yes, there are challenges, and don't start to look for overly huge challenges. Look for little things. It could be disputes. It could be something that you don't even, maybe you didn't even think it was a challenge, but this question brings it to your mind. Then think of how you walked through it and how that particular solution, if people are still using that solution and you're doing better, and you know that if time, it won't hit you the way it hit you the last time. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Zigwe. To add to what you've said, and this question also points towards innovation. It points towards innovation. You can't be a leader and you keep doing the same thing in the same way over and over, even if it's getting you all the results you want. At some point, sometimes you may get tired and you may want, there will be that need for you to come up with something new, something interesting, something out of the box. So this question answers that question. If something happens abruptly, if something happens suddenly, you didn't plan it, you didn't see it coming, how would you be able to navigate? How would you be, how wouldn't your head go under the waters and then you can't feel fine again? What would you be able to do if something goes off? If something goes off, you're doing your work. I remember during the COVID year, that was 2020, when we were reviewing applications, you know, it was the COVID year and it sent shocks to the world. Everybody was shocked. Nobody saw the whole shutting down, going indoors, doing nothing. And so all the responses that period had to do with COVID-19 came, it shut down our operations. We couldn't go down to reach out to students in schools. So we had to, their own innovation was as simple as starting a class on WhatsApp, calling the principal, getting the contacts of the children and asking them to join a WhatsApp class. That was for teachers that were applying at that period. And I know there was one that got in. So she started a WhatsApp class, and what she was doing then was connect on WhatsApp call and then drop messages there, and that was it. It was working. That's innovation. It was resilience in the face of trouble, in the face of sudden change. Some said they couldn't go out again, so they had to look for a way. There was this person, I had reviewed her application before, then I'd helped her review application. What's her name? She also works in the gender, in the justice space. She's also, I think she's a lawyer, and she runs a program like a behind bars something. And then at that point, we were reviewing the response she wrote. I had to tell her, no, sit down and think. You were not able to go to the prisons anymore. You couldn't go to the prisons to reach out to these people. So what did you do? How did you innovate? And then she had to start thinking, okay, we're able to do this way. But I think there was one that told me she was able to look for a WhatsApp class. She organized WhatsApp classes for the prison people. There was a way she explained the thing. And at the end of the day, it made sense. So it speaks to your ability as a leader to come up with solutions when there are problems. It speaks to your ability as a leader to not just sit down, fold your hands and mop around and ask, what do we do? It speaks to your ability to be creative, to pop up and say, okay, this is what we do, even when things are not working at this point in time. It speaks to your ability to also be very sincere, because in trying to say we did this solution, that was one of the things we did with the lady. And when she said this was what she did. By the time I broke down those things she said, I said, no, this wouldn't suffice. If you make it to the interview stage, you would have a problem explaining this. You would have a problem convincing the panel. So we had to look at it critically, and then I could see where the problem was, and we tied it together. So if you're a leader, you're here now, I'm very sure there has been one way or the other you were able to solve a problem, or you were able to press forward, or you had a challenge in your work. People like us that run non-profits and all, we've had times where we had to ask ourselves, who send us do this work? We want to do this thing, we want to continue. Some of you that are volunteering, I'm very sure there have been times where maybe no funds were coming in to aid in your transportation. They were not appreciating you as they needed to appreciate you in the company, in the non-profits, in the NGO. And then you were asking yourself, do I really want to do this? So it answers to this question. Resilience is a hallmark of a leader. And if you're not being able to be innovative, you're not innovative, it's a problem. I remember during that yearly, that COVID-19 period, most yearly programs now became face-to-face, online, virtual. I think that was where we started all these Zoom calls and all. Zoom is a result of resilience. It's a result of innovation. Before we had Skype, people were using Skype, but when Zoom came up, when COVID-19 came up, everybody dived where? To Skype. Google had to sit up and reignite their own Google Meet and all that, just trying to see how they can beat. Microsoft came up with Microsoft Teams. I remember I did some interviews for international opportunities on Microsoft Teams. It was my very first time, something I would have traveled all the way to Abuja and other places to go for the interview. But because of that COVID-19, we did them virtually. So this call we're doing now is as a result of innovation, is as a result of resilience from the producers of this. So you need to ask yourself, what have I been able to produce to beat the challenge I'm facing? If you're able to think, if you're able to sit down and ask yourself these questions, you would get them. So we've really come to the end of the questions series. But then before I ask if we have any questions, and then also ask our panelists to throw one or two more light on any other thing they may want to say, I want to just give us short pointers. Now, after you're done writing these essays, please, as much as possible, there is no time again. I think that's one of the reasons why the leadership of the Yearly Network Nigeria decided to push this thing closer, so you'll be able to sit down and write your applications. Applications are closing 12th of September next month. So you still have some time, more than a week. When you write, sit down, ask yourself questions. After writing these answers, these essays, give it to someone to read. There are 1,001 Mandela Washington Fellows, not just Nigerians across. In Nigeria, we are more than 400, over 500 plus, if I'm not mistaken. So you can Google them. I remember there were some opportunities I was applying for, global opportunities. I had to Google winners of those opportunities. I Googled them. I didn't know somewhere all the way in China. I sent them an email. I'm trying to apply for this, and I saw your name here. Your name popped up under winners of beneficiaries of this. Could you help me look at my applications and tell me what went wrong or what I'm not doing well? Some worked, some didn't work. Some I got in, some I didn't get in. So you don't just sit down. For MWF, I didn't give anybody my application to read. I told you as I was applying at the nick of time, I submitted, and God being so faithful, I got in. But I've not used it as a yardstick to sit down and say, going forward, other applications, I won't give it to an extra eye. If I see the need for giving the application to an extra eye, the ones I know that, no, I need an extra eye to vet, I put pride aside though, because the thing what they find, pride will give me that thing. I put pride aside and I go all the way to do what? Apply, to send it to those people. So don't write in isolation. Don't live in isolation. We are relational beings. And our creator has made it such a way that we depend on each other. We need each other to survive. Write applications, don't barge in on them, don't bother them. Carefully and respectfully send them your emails. Email them this, tell them, could you help me vet? Could you help me put me through? That's one of the ways, that's one of the hallmarks of a winner. Also, I also want you to understand the concept of times and seasons. I've been hearing there are people that applied 4 times, 5 times. I know those that applied 6 times and it doesn't work. There's a particular opportunity I've applied for more than 4 times, it didn't work. As a matter of fact, I was discussing it with somebody this afternoon, and the person was like, has it made sense why those opportunities didn't work? I said, yes, that particular opportunity. I said, yes, it hasn't really made sense 100%. We're just discussing that this afternoon. I said, but I can see now why God delayed me from getting that at that point in time. Those 4 years ago, I kept applying back to back. I gave people to read, I get people to go through and all that. I don't know if you understand. So it's important for you to understand the concept of times and seasons. When you've done what you're supposed to do and it doesn't work out, don't beat up yourself. It doesn't mean you're not good enough. It may just be that it's not your time. So I'll also be leaving it. I'll be asking our panelists at this point now to drop in their final words. I'll be asking them now to drop in their final words. So let me start with Funke. Please, Funke, can we have your final?
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Esther. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. I mean, a whole lot has been said today. So I'm just going to say that don't let anything that you've heard stop you from applying. Don't think that maybe because you don't have as much numbers, or maybe because you don't have a non-profit or your own project, you can't get in. If you're here, it means that you think you have something good going for you. So please put in your application. I think one of the things that fellowships like MWF does, or applications like MWF does, is it helps you to answer some questions. Apart from the fact that you're going to be submitting the application, some of the questions that are asked you will have to go through some form of introspection. And I bet you, if you go through that introspection, it will sort of help refine whatever it is you're doing, help you to find better ways to do it. Or maybe, let's say, for instance, in terms of inclusion that we talked about, maybe in some way you've not been very inclusive. It will just give you that introspection that helps you to do your work better. So please don't deny yourself of this opportunity. I mean, on this panel, you saw people that applied 3-4 times. You saw people that applied the first time and they got in. So give it your best shot. Make sure you put your best foot forward. Make sure you don't lie. You be as original as possible. And I'm going to just end by saying, I'm a person of faith, and I believe so much in, just like what Esther was saying, in timing and also in God's favor. Do your best, put in the best application, make sure that you dot all the I's, you cross all the T's, make sure that there are no spelling errors, make sure that everything, you put in the right context, and then pray. If you believe in God, pray to God, and then just trust that whatever happens at the end of the day, it's either your time or maybe it's some other time. So thank you for having me. I already dropped my LinkedIn. I would connect better on LinkedIn. And for those people that, I can't promise I'll be able to review everybody's application because I'm already doing that. But if you send your applications, maybe within this week, I might be able to just share my thoughts around it. So thank you for having me. And I wish you guys all the best.
Okay, I can't seem to hear anybody talk. I was asking Funke to give us her final words.
She just finished.
Esther, she just finished, actually.
Oh, thank you, Presido. So let's move to Zigwe. Zigwe, can you give us your final words, please?
Sure. Thank you. So my final words would be in response to some questions I saw in the chat box. Sorry, we could. Like Esther said, the deadline is 12th September. It may look, she said next month. So please, and know that MWF applications, deadline is not 12 midnight. Is sometime between 5, some very funny kind of timing. So don't wait till midnight. You might wait and you go and you can't submit again. Then Someone, if you exceed the word count, no. The rule is must you finish the word count? You don't have to use the whole 250 words if you are answering it. You're answering the question appropriately, but just don't exceed. Don't go 251, but you can do lower than that. But make sure that you answer the question sufficiently. Thirdly, somebody asked, should you use third person? No, please don't say Zigwai did. No, I personalize it. Don't use third person. Someone also asked, is there a place for CV upload, pictures, social media handles? If you have started your application, you would see that there's a place where you're supposed to fill bio data and put in some CV information. So there's that provision for CV, but there is no place for uploading pictures or social media handle. Yes, so I would just say that please be original. Do not hold back on sharing your experiences, your achievements, but at the same time, do not lie. Please do not lie. Then I would also say that if you would just like Funke said, if you would need some assistance with proofreading or reviewing your application, I also dropped my LinkedIn and Twitter handle. You could always just send me an inbox and we will talk about that. All the best, people. Don't give up. There are other opportunities also if you don't get in, but then do your best, give it your all, so that at the end of the day, you know that you actually gave it your all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have Julius on the call? If we have Julius, please give us your final words.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity. I think what I'm going to say is we need to be original, like what my colleagues have said. You need to be able to articulate what you want from the fellowship, what you want, and what you're going to, how what you get from the fellowship improve your work. You need to be able to say that clearly, and then avoid using big figures. I've reached 1 million people, I've reached 10,000 people, I've reached, you don't need to lie about the numbers. If it is 5 people, if it is 20 people, if it is 50 people, just tell a story of how the numbers are growing, the numbers are scaling. Like, I started with 2, now it's 10. From 10, now 50. So mostly I see people writing 10,000 people. Like, I have reached 10,000 people in the applications and all of that. I think those things may not really help you tell the story properly. Because I remember one of my interviews in 2020, the interviewer asked me during the interview stage, she was like, how did you know you have reached 2,000 people? How do you know you have reached 4,000 people? Can you briefly explain that? And then I started to I was looking at her, she was looking at me. I didn't even know what I was going to say. But I was unable to properly respond to that question because I felt I was counting numbers of people on assembly ground that I've gone to speak to, So and those things really, I couldn't really, provide a proper feedback to that question. And I think that's why I didn't even get into the fellowship in 2020. So the numbers doesn't really mean, just explain it properly, how the numbers is growing and what it can become when you return back to your home country. So, and then trust God, keep praying. It's God that's help, man. There's nothing we can really do with our strength. It's just by the grace of God. So I think that's all I will share for now. Thank you so much.
I want to sincerely thank you, everyone, for joining this call today. I want to thank the leadership of the Yali Network Nigeria for organizing and hosting this. I want to thank our speakers, that's our panelists, our facilitators, for helping us shed more light on this. Thank you. I'd leave by saying you're not a failure. You're not a failure. So don't think if you did one thing or you impacted one person, you failed. That's not how it's been judged. Just put your best foot forward and you never can tell. And then finally, please try as much as possible and research, read up on all you can about the MWF so that you don't ask some questions that you're not supposed to be asking, you don't do what you're not supposed to be doing. Read as much as possible, ask as much as possible, and then just put your own foot forward, pray, and let's hope for the best. So at this point now, I'll be handing over to Olufumi, that's the head Yali Network Nigeria, for the final words, as we call it a day. People have been asking questions about getting the recording. I'm sure she would have responses to that. So for me, it's over to you.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Esther. Thank you so much to our dear speakers. Zigwe is still on the call. Thank you so much. Thank you, Amarachi. Thank you, Julius. Thank you, Funke. And thank you, Anna. I know it has definitely been a very, very insightful session. So thank you all so much for joining. And the recording in response to that question will actually be shared on our Yali Network Nigeria YouTube page, probably before the end of this week. So you can take our time to check it out, at least after the final session tomorrow. All the links for all 3 days will be on our YouTube page. So please be sure to subscribe and turn on your notification button so that when it is posted, you can immediately be notified. Once again, thank you very, very much. We can't appreciate you enough, to all our speakers, for really sharing so freely and so deeply about your experience. And thank you so much, our dear moderator, for your time in leading this conversation in such an insightful manner. And to everyone, we'll see you tomorrow, which is the final session of this 3-day application guide session. We hope it has been helpful. We hope it has been insightful. And we truly, truly wish you all the best in your MWF application for this year. So we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening, everyone.